Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about the steps of a real estate transaction. What happens from offer to close? I'm going to tell you right now. What's up you guys? I'm Annemarie LaTulip with eXp Realty out here in where? Billerica, Massachusetts, small suburb north of Boston. We're going to talk about what happens step by step in a real estate transaction. Okay. First thing you should know is that there's a lot of things that happen before the house hits the market. And a lot of that is preparation that the listing agent will do. But for the purposes of this video, I just want to go step by step once an offer is made. Step 1, buyer makes an offer. The buyer's agent will help the buyer craft an offer that will hopefully win them the house and submit it to the listing agent along with a copy of the deposit check. It's a small deposit, usually $1,000, and a current pre-approval. The listing agent then reviews the offer or offers in this market with the seller. The seller will negotiate, negotiations begin at this point, and an agreement is made. Now, like I said, in this market, there's usually multiple offers, but for the sake of this video, let's say it was just your offer, you negotiated, offer accepted. Now we are officially under contract and the transaction begins. It is at that point where your deposit check will be picked up and deposited into an escrow account, usually held by the listing brokerage. So step 2, inspection. Now, in this market, a lot of buyers are waiving their home inspections, but generally in an even market, a buyer will perform a home inspection. And that is after the offer is signed, 7 to 10 days from the date of the signed offer. Once the inspection is done, negotiations may begin again, depending on the results of the inspection. So it could be a reduction in the purchase price, or it could be the seller making some repairs, or it could be nothing. But regardless of the findings, that will all be determined within that 7 to 10 day window, which will lead us to step 3, which is the purchase and sale agreement. The purchase and sale agreement is a longer version of the offer, if you will. It is your official sales contract. It is drafted by the attorneys. The attorney for the seller and the buyer will go back and forth with this document until it is ready for signature by both parties. And at that time, as written in the offer, another deposit will be due. Now, this deposit is bigger. It's usually about 5% of the purchase price, depending on the price point. It could be as low as 3% or lower, depending also on your loan program. But generally speaking, it's usually 5% minus the $1,000 that you've already given, okay? So attorneys have reviewed, the purchase and sale agreement is ready to sign. Both parties sign the document and riders that may accompany. And the larger deposit is then deposited into the escrow account that, remember, is being held by the listing brokerage. Okay, so we're halfway there, right? Step 4 is the appraisal. Now, obviously, if this is a cash deal, then there's not going to be an appraisal. So this is talking about any buyer that is financing the home. The appraiser will contact the listing agent. The listing agent will meet the appraiser at the home and give them all the information, all the updates, all the great stuff about the house, and provide them with comps to support the purchase price that we've all agreed on. Because remember, if the house doesn't appraise, then one of two things has to happen. Either the seller has to reduce their price, or the buyer has to bring the money to bridge the appraisal difference, right? So we all hope for a good appraisal, right? So appraisal is done, submitted to the bank, and we usually hear about 5 days later whether or not the home appraised, which brings us to step 5, which brings us to step 5, which is loan commitment. Your loan commitment date was another date in the offer. This is the date when we know that your loan is solid, it has been approved by all underwriting, and it is good to go. At that point, everybody takes a big sigh, a big breath of relief, because that's really the last hurdle in the transaction, okay? So we've received loan commitment. The next step, now this step can be done at any point during the transaction, but I'm gonna call it the next step, which is step 6, because it has to happen before the closing, okay? And I generally wait until I have loan commitment to do this step, which is your smoke inspection and final water read. That will happen toward the end of the transaction. The fire inspector will come out and inspect the smoke detectors, inspect carbon monoxide detectors, and give you a certificate that we need in order to close. And also the town will come out and perform a final water read. Or actually, sometimes they do it remotely, but that's when that happens, towards the end of the transaction, okay? So step 7 then, I hope I'm not going too fast, everybody with me? Step 7 would be your final walkthrough. Final walkthrough happens once we have a clear to close, right? Which is that we're ready to go, everything's ready, the lawyers have the documents ready for signature, and we've determined a time and place for the closing. So the walkthrough will happen either the night before or the morning of, depending on when the closing is. Now, I get asked this a lot, this question. When will we know when the closing is going to be? Well, we'll know the day, but we won't know the time. Well, we might know the place, but we won't know the time until just before we close, because it really depends on the attorney's schedules and where they can fit it in that day. So keep in mind that you won't really have a time for closing in advance. It's usually, maybe a week or 2 prior to the closing itself, okay? So we do our final walkthrough. Everything looks great. Usually the buyer's agent will then take the keys with them and bring them to the closing. Now, with COVID, things have been a little bit different with closing, but your last step, step 8, is closing day. Now, before COVID-19, closing day used to be everybody would get together, the buyer, the buyer's agent, the seller's agent, both attorneys, sometimes the lender. It's a little bit different now that COVID happened, because closing started happening remotely. So now I'm seeing a lot of buyers will go in and sign the documents with their attorney, the sellers will go sign with their attorney, and it doesn't really happen a lot that everybody's in the same room. But that was always nice to have everybody together and to have the buyer meet the seller, but it's a little bit different now. But in any event, closing day is still very exciting. Closing day, the buyers go in, sit down with their attorney, sign all the documents, receive the keys, and that's it. Those are the steps of a real estate transaction, except for your big housewarming party. Don't forget that. So I hope that wasn't too confusing. I'm happy to clarify. If you have any questions, certainly contact me. I'll answer them right away. And as always, if you like my videos, you know what to do, right? Go ahead and click on that little red subscribe button. All right, you guys, happy house hunting, happy home selling, and I will see you on my next video.